Level 1. Employee starting their first 401k. Across the outer parking lot, you approach the suburban office center. You push through the glass doors with your new badge in your pocket. At reception, new employees gather around the HR coordinator. The HR coordinator points everyone toward a folding table by the wall. You step forward and clip the badge to your shirt. She gives you the paper 401k form with the tear-off stub. You take the HR pen and stand beside the table. Another employee signs quickly and returns a form to the stack. You look across the room at workers already seated in cubicles. You open the form on the folding table. You read $1,200 on the first account line. You read 0.85% on the annual fee line. You carry the unsigned form one step away from the table. The HR coordinator places your unsigned form on top of the return stack. You step back to the folding table and take the HR pen again. The HR coordinator waits beside the stack with her hand on the page.
You sign the 401k form with the HR pen. You tear off the stub and fold it under the signed page. You hand the signed form back across the folding table. You keep the stub inside your folder and move toward your cubicle. At your desk, you place your first paycheck on top of the folder. You sit down at the keyboard while the badge swings against your shirt. You work through the afternoon with the folder beside the monitor. After the shift, you stand with the folder under your arm. You leave the office center through the same glass doors. Past the parking lot, you cross toward the bank branch. Inside the branch, you join the rope line behind two workers. You hold the paycheck and the 401k stub against your chest. At the teller window, you push the paycheck across the counter. The teller gives you a bank receipt. You place the receipt beside the folded 401k stub. You step away from the window and leave the branch. Back at the office center, you enter the corporate cafeteria. You wait as employees move past the hot counter with plastic trays. You hand the sandwich coupon to the cafeteria worker. The worker gives you a wrapped sandwich and points to the trays. You place the sandwich on a plastic tray. Near the window, you sit with the folder on the empty chair. Employees at the next table talk about payroll deductions and matching forms. You finish the sandwich and lift the plastic tray. You carry the tray to the return rack. You leave the cafeteria with the folder under your arm. At the edge of the office park, you stand under the bus sign. Other workers step into line behind you with badges still clipped. The driver opens the front door, and you board the bus. You squeeze the bus ticket between your fingers. You sit with the folder across your knees. You ride past the office center and the bank branch. You step off near your rented apartment building. Up the stairs, you press the folder against your jacket. You unlock the apartment and enter the front room. You place the bank receipt on the small table. You carry the paper 401k stub toward the box of bills. You place the stub on top of the box. You lift the stub and look at your signature again. You place it back under the bank receipt. You remove the badge and set it beside the papers. For a moment, you stand over the box. You carry your empty lunch bag into the kitchen. Back in the front room, you look at the box again. You place the HR pen beside the signed 401k stub. From the doorway, you switch off the room light. You leave the 401k stub on the box of bills. Level 2. HR coordinator of the retirement plan. Behind the HR table, you face new employees holding forms. The same company badge now carries an HR sticker. A new worker steps forward and offers a signed 401k form. You take the form and point toward the contribution box. The next employee moves up with another signed page. You collect it and place it on the growing stack. From the table, you move into the HR office with the stack. You set the thick 401k enrollment batch folder on the intake counter. You open the folder across the counter. You read $62,000 on your salary letter. You read $240,000 on the monthly contribution report. You press the HR stamp onto the first form.
You staple the stack and slide it into the enrollment batch folder. You face the payroll desk behind a half wall inside HR. You carry the folder to the payroll clerk. You place the paper employee list in front of the clerk. The payroll clerk checks each name against the deduction column. You watch the payroll clerk mark the deduction column beside each employee name. You wait while the clerk turns another page of the employee list. You place the checked list inside the enrollment batch folder. With the folder under your arm, you head toward the copy center. You roll the document cart beside you through the office corridor.
You enter the copy center behind another HR assistant. You place the paper employee list on the copier table. You feed the enrollment stack into the copier tray. Employees wait outside HR with more forms in their hands. You take the copies from the output tray. You load the copies onto the document cart. Back through the corridor, you guide the cart toward HR. Near the conference room doorway, you stop at the refreshment table. You pick up an office donut from the meeting room tray. You set the donut on the lid of an archive box. You wait beside the loading corridor until the service elevator arrives. You roll the cart into the elevator and stand beside the folder. At the loading entrance, you find a company taxi by the curb. You lift the archive box into the taxi trunk. In the back seat, you keep the enrollment batch folder across your lap. The driver takes you to the bank branch with the corporate window. Through the business services door, you enter the branch. You clip the bank visitor badge beside your HR badge. At the corporate window, you face the bank clerk. You hand over the payroll check. The clerk gives you a stamped payroll receipt. You place the receipt inside the enrollment batch folder. Outside, you return to the taxi with the folder against your chest. The driver continues toward the archive storage warehouse outside the district. A storage clerk meets you at the intake entrance. Together, you push the document cart through the intake aisle. You lift the archive box onto the warehouse table. You place the enrollment batch folder inside the archive box. You sign the intake sheet beside the storage clerk. The clerk leads you to the shelf marked for retirement records. You carry the box to the shelf. You place the box beside older retirement record boxes. On the way back, you take the donut from the lid. You roll the empty cart toward the warehouse entrance. You return to the business center after lunch. Through the rear corridor, you re-enter the HR office. Another group of workers waits beside the table. You stand behind the HR table again. A new worker slides a form toward you. You guide the worker toward the contribution box. You press the HR stamp onto the form. You place the form at the front of the next batch. You close the thick 401k enrollment batch folder. Workers keep extending signed forms across the table. You hold the batch folder against your chest. Level 3. Consultant taking old 401ks. You turn your sedan into the paid parking lot downtown. At the entrance machine, you take the parking ticket. You cross the lot with a leather folder under your arm. You pass through the glass front of the brokerage office. At reception, you nod and continue toward a client room. A departing worker sits across from you with an old 401k statement. You open the leather IRA rollover folder on the table. You place your business card beside the client's statement. You turn the fee calculator toward the client. You read $130,000 on your compensation sheet inside the folder. You read $180,000 on the rollover estimate. You read 1.25% on the annual fee line. The client holds the old statement flat against the table. You slide the old 401k statement beside the rollover form. You hand the silver pen across the table. The client takes the pen and signs the rollover form. You collect the signed page and place it inside the leather folder. Together, you walk back through the brokerage lobby. At the reception desk, you hand over the intake slip. You pass through the frosted glass door into the advisor workroom. You carry the leather folder into the workroom. You place the client statement on the transfer tray. Outside the office, you step into the coffee shop next door. At the pickup counter, another broker waits beside you. You lift the broker coffee cup from the counter. Through the office lobby, you carry the cup back to the workroom. You place the cup on the advisor table near the folder. You return to the paid parking lot behind the brokerage building. You insert the parking ticket at the exit machine. You drive to the FedEx courier point with the folder beside you. Inside the courier point, you wait near the shipping counter. You remove the rollover papers from the leather folder. You place the papers into the FedEx envelope. You seal the FedEx envelope on the counter pad. You hand the envelope to the courier clerk. The clerk gives you a shipping receipt. You place the receipt inside the leather IRA rollover folder. You drive out of downtown and move toward the client's suburb. You park near the client's house. With the gift folder in hand, you walk up the front path. The client opens the door and leads you to the kitchen table. You sit across from the client again. You hand over the gift folder. The client opens the old account folder beside the coffee mug. You receive the paper check closing the old account. You place the closing check inside the leather folder. You stand and follow the client toward the front door. Back at the sedan, you place the folder on the passenger seat. You drive toward the brokerage office with the old account paperwork. Through the glass front, you re-enter the office. You carry the closing check to the intake counter. You hand the check to the brokerage operations clerk. Beside the transfer tray, you wait while the clerk logs the account. You carry the remaining papers back into the advisor workroom. You close the leather IRA rollover folder around the client file. You hold the folder in front of the client's old statement copy. The client leaves the house with the gift folder. You walk away from the counter with the old 401k file. You deliver the account into the brokerage intake room before the day ends. Level 4. Record Keeper Platform Salesperson. A rented black SUV drops you at the conference center vendor entrance. You step out with the metal demo case in one hand. Booth workers move crates across the loading area. You follow the freight lane into the conference hall. You clip the conference badge onto your jacket near the entrance. Down the aisle, you find the record keeper booth between two vendor stands. You lift the metal demo case onto the booth table. You open the case in front of passing benefits executives. You set the enrollment kit mock-up beside the open case. You take a water bottle from the booth table. You pick up a bagel from the conference tray. A CFO approaches the booth with lawyers and a benefits director. You open the enrollment kit mock-up toward the CFO. You point the CFO toward the platform service page. You read $220,000 on your sales compensation page. You read $12 billion on the platform asset sheet. You read 0.18% on the annual platform fee line. You close the asset sheet and return it to the demo case. The CFO follows you into a side meeting room. You set the metal demo case on the meeting table. You give the enrollment kit mock-up to the benefits director. You place the corporate contract beside the kit. The CFO compares the contract with the worker materials. You stand beside the table while the lawyers mark signature tabs. After the meeting, the CFO's assistant leads you out. In the rented black SUV, you ride to the employer headquarters. At the visitor lane, security checks your conference badge. You pass a wall of employee photos near the lobby. You cross the benefits department and enter the boardroom. You bring the corporate contract to the long table. You set the contract in front of the CFO. You hand the CFO pen across the table. The CFO signs the contract and slides it back. A lawyer walks with you to the legal firm across town. Inside the legal firm, you set the contract on the signing table. The lawyer presses the seal onto the signature page. Outside the legal firm, you stop near the curb. Benefits staff load enrollment boxes from the office into a company van. You stand with the contract folder in your hands. You open the contract folder near the curb. You stop with the fee page open beside the curb. You close the folder and move toward the waiting SUV. You ride to the data center outside the city. At the secured entrance, you step out with the metal demo case. You show the data center pass to the guard. Inside the lobby, you stand beside the access scanner. You press the data center pass to the scanner plate. A guard leads you through the interior corridor. You remove the USB token from the demo case. The platform operations lead receives the USB token from you. You wait near the intake desk while the transfer is logged. The operations lead returns the USB token. You place the USB token inside the metal case. You give the signed contract to the operations lead. Through the security corridor, you leave the data center. You enter the airport hotel lobby beside other conference vendors. You set the metal demo case on the luggage cart. You place the signed contract folder on top of the case. Before closing the case, you open the enrollment kit mock-up. You look at the default fund slot inside the kit. You close the metal case and take the handle. You carry the signed employer plan toward the elevator. Level 5. Target Date Fund Manager. You bring an enrollment kit sample into the asset management office. Outside, the driver waits beside the corporate electric car. You pass through the investment staff entrance. At security, you press your company pass to the gate. Across the investment floor, you follow the corridor to the committee room. You set the thick Target Date Fund 2065 prospectus on the table. You place the enrollment kit sample beside it. You spread the printed glide path beside the prospectus. You read $520,000 on your compensation notice. You read $48 billion on the fund asset schedule. You read 0.32% on the expense ratio page. With the red pencil, you mark the glide path. You set the pencil beside the prospectus. From the side table, you lift the porcelain espresso cup. At the print approval desk, you meet the retirement consultant. You give the prospectus to the consultant. The consultant leads you into a placement meeting. You stand beside the table arranged with enrollment kits. You open the first kit in front of the consultant. You place the 2065 prospectus in the default option slot. You close the enrollment kit sample on top of the prospectus. Through the service entrance, you leave the asset management office. The driver takes you to the financial document printer. A production manager meets you on the print floor. You pass stacks of enrollment materials near the packing line. You lift the box of prospectuses from the line. You place the courier label on the top box. The shipping clerk receives the box from you. You watch the clerk load it onto the outgoing cart. You continue to the business club restaurant for the next meeting. You enter with the investment committee folder under your arm. Across the table, the retirement consultant waits with plan materials. You move the sushi plate to the side. You place the consultant's card beside the committee folder. You open the folder toward the consultant. You point to the default fund placement page. You close the folder and stand from the table. The consultant leads you toward the headquarters meeting room. Inside the consultant headquarters, you take the front seat. You place the investment committee folder at the front of the table. You give the folder to the consultant. Committee members enter and take seats around the table. You place the target date prospectus inside the review packet. The committee chair passes the packet down the table. You leave with the consultant's card inside your folder. The driver takes you to the large employer campus. At the visitor center, benefits staff meet you near the desk. You carry the box of prospectuses across the tiled corridor. Benefits staff lead you into the enrollment materials room. You set the box beside the enrollment kits. You open the top enrollment kit. You place the Target Date Fund 2065 prospectus inside the kit. You close the kit and pass it to the benefits staff. Employees enter the room and approach the materials table. You stand beside the table as employees take enrollment kits. You carry the remaining prospectus box to the storage room. You set the box on the lower shelf beside extra kits. Before leaving campus, you return to the consultant meeting room. The consultant places an old pension file beside the target date packet. You place the consultant's card on top of the old pension file. Back at the asset management office, you cross the investment floor. You set the committee folder on the investment table. You place the consultant's card inside the folder. You close the thick Target Date Fund 2065 prospectus. You carry it back to the enrollment kit sample. You place the prospectus inside the kit. You close the kit on top of the default fund page. You leave the old pension file beside the closed enrollment kit. Level 6. Insurer of pension obligations. You bring the old pension file to the insurance tower. You step through security with the blue pension risk transfer folder. An insurance assistant meets you at the executive elevator. Together, You cross the executive floor toward the conference room. You place the blue folder on the table. You set the old pension file beside it. You press the insurer seal onto the approval page. You read $1.6 million on your compensation memo. You read $3.4 billion on the obligation schedule. You read $3.6 billion on the premium check request. You close the memo and lift the blue folder. You take the elevator down to the waiting car. At the actuarial firm, a senior actuary meets you at reception. You follow him past cubicles filled with pension tables. The actuary gives you the bound actuarial table. You carry the table into the review room. You set it beside the blue pension risk transfer folder. The actuary turns the binder while you stand beside him. You carry the binder back toward the car. At the old corporate headquarters, you step out near the lobby. Inside, former workers wait near the benefits office. You pass the waiting chairs with the blue folder. The CEO leads you through the corridor. Outside the corporate records room, the records manager waits. You receive the silver archive key from the records manager. You unlock the archive room beside him. Between shelves of old pension files, you stop at the lower row. You lift a box of old pension files from the shelf. You carry the box into the corridor. Former workers remain near the benefits office as you pass. You hold the file box against your chest. At the CEO's signing table, you set the box down. You hand the CEO pen across the table. The CEO signs the transfer papers and returns the pen. You place the signed papers inside the blue folder. At the private dining club, you meet the corporate team and the actuary. You enter with the sealed transfer folder. At the reserved table, you sit across from the CEO. You cut the steak on the porcelain plate. After the meal, you take the sealed transfer folder. At the custodian bank, you enter through the institutional entrance. You press the custodian bank pass to the security panel. A banker leads you into the custodial intake room. You place the premium check request on the intake table. You insert the premium check into the custodian envelope. You seal the custodian envelope in front of the banker. You hand the envelope to the custodian banker. Back at the insurance tower, you return to the executive floor. The insurance assistant opens the storage room. You place the box of old pension files beside the intake shelf. You set the bound actuarial table on top of the box. You hold the blue pension risk transfer folder above the files. You place the silver archive key beside the folder. You step back from the shelf. You look at the box of old pension files under the blue folder. You close the storage room door behind the insurance assistant. Level 7. Owner of the pension machine. You pass through the private jet terminal's side security lane. You press the private terminal card at the glass door. Past the terminal guard, you walk toward the waiting car. The driver takes you from the terminal to the private equity fund office. Through the partner entrance, you enter the office tower. You keep the leather board packet under your arm. You cross the partner floor toward the boardroom. Fund partners stand around the long table as you enter. You open the leather board packet in front of them. You place the acquisition binder beside the closing documents. You read $38 million on the carry-in bonus schedule. You read $220 billion on the controlled pension asset page. You read $1.9 billion on the annual fee summary. You turn the board packet toward the senior partner. You slide the closing check across the boardroom table. You lift the crystal water glass from the table. You set it beside the acquisition binder. You take the platinum pen from the signing tray. You sign the acquisition binder in front of the fund partners. You close the binder in front of the fund partners. The driver takes you to the notary office. Inside the notary office, you set the binder on the table. You press the notary seal onto the closing page. You return the platinum pen to the binder pocket. You carry the sealed binder back to the car. You arrive at the pension document archive outside the city. The archive director leads you through the storage entrance. You pass a wall marked with old employer plan names. You pass the first aisle labeled Record Keeper Contracts. You pass the next aisle labeled Consultant Agreements. You pass another aisle labeled Insurance Blocks. You stop beside the aisle labeled Asset Management Files. At the archive intake table, You open the acquisition binder. You point to the acquired record keeper line. You point to the acquired consultant line. You point to the acquired insurance block line. You point to the acquired asset manager line. You close the binder and follow the archive director deeper inside. The interior door reads, Plan Records. The archive director gives you the gold key. You insert the gold key into the archive door. You turn the key and pull the Plan Records door open. You face rows of archived pension boxes inside the room. You step inside between the rows. You pull the wooden drawer of archived folders toward you. You lift the first folder and set it on the drawer edge. You carry the acquisition binder into the archive aisle. You place the acquisition binder between the record keeper contracts and insurance block files.